Hey everybody, welcome to episode 40 of the Snake in the Draft podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Vines. You can find me on Twitter at jsnake_DFF. In this episode, I'll be doing a solo podcast for the first time for the weekly recaps. And it's going to be talking about Dynasty ads and planning for the fantasy football trade deadline. Also talk about a couple of buy-sell candidates there. Not a whole lot on buy-sell, more talking about strategy. So first I want to talk about our rookies, our rookie quarterbacks, that is. So we finally had an explosion game by Tua Tagovailoa. We had the Dolphins win 4 straight games, which is really good to see for the Dolphins. You know, it's nice to see teams turn it around. I know the Cardinals had a missed field goal, but still, a win's a win. Tua went for 71% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, really good passer rating of 122.32, which is pretty solid, and also was QB 15 with 21 4-point per touchdown fantasy points. So with this, we also have Justin Herbert being the QB9 with 23.4 fantasy points. So that's pretty similar, to how we had Tua play just now. And then Joe Burrow just the other week had 18.86 fantasy points, which that wasn't like his best week ever because he's been pretty consistent. Obviously, Herbert's been the one that's shining above and been really, really consistent. But with even like week 7, Burrow was 33 PPR fantasy points, or 4-point per touchdown fantasy points. So with this, I think we're starting to show that these rookie quarterbacks are the, changing of the guard in a way. They're starting to show that they're the next up-and-coming guys, and that's why in my own dynasty rankings, I Burrow still as the rookie quarterback 1, Herbert rookie quarterback 2, and Tua as the rookie quarterback 3. I think with this, that order can be changed around pretty much whatever you feel about these players. Honestly, I'd be glad to have any of them. Herbert was obviously the draft steal. And with this, my own personal rankings is Burrow QB7, Herbert QB8, Tua QB9. The only quarterbacks I currently have above, which I actually may end up dropping Lamar Jackson down after another really bad week, honestly. But I have Mahomes QB1, Kyler Murray QB2, Lamar Jackson QB3, Russell Wilson QB4, Josh Allen QB5, Deshaun Watson QB6. So that's like a nice tier right there. Lamar Jackson is quickly dropping out of that tier. You may be wondering, I didn't hear Dak Prescott's name. Well, for my rankings, whenever injuries occur, typically drop down those players, especially when there's up-and-coming rookies around. So Dak is the quarterback 10 right now. That's just how I do my rankings for in-season. I drop down players that won't be playing for the current time. That, to me, helps with sort of balancing that contender versus retooling mindset, and also just gets into the value of these players as well. I think if I was going to Dak right now, obviously I think I'd want Dak over Lamar Jackson with how he's been playing. But, yeah, overall, that QB 10 spot, like the QBs are just getting really tight right now. Those top 10 are the tiers are starting to get a little split because you have those up-and-coming guys in Burrow, Herbert, and Tua. So now I want to talk about the explosion of Dalvin Cook. So the last 2 weeks, he has been on a tear, and that is after missing, week 6 and 7. I think one of those was a bye week. But, week 8, 48.6 fantasy points. That's bonkers. That's ridiculous. And then this last week, 39.2. Dalvin Cook, what do you do with him in Dynasty? In the sense of like, obviously you're holding him, but talking more rankings wise, like he's my current running back 3 right now. And I have it to where it's Christian McCaffrey 1, Alvin Kamara 2, Dalvin Cook 3. The main issue with Dalvin Cook is more related to injury concerns, just because, like, I'm not saying that the dude's injury prone, because I don't really like that thought process. It's more just that he's injury prone, I guess. It's just more that injuries seem to come his way more frequently. They do not always overlap, and so that makes it to where, he's an interesting guy that you can get the injury discount on. He also hasn't been like as explosive as he's been, before. Like, obviously he's had blow-up games, but these last 2 weeks have been tremendous. Like, these are like Christian McCaffrey style weeks, like prime Saquon Barkley style weeks recently with Dalvin Cook. So He's one of those guys that if you're a contender and you see a team that's more retooling, rebuilding, and they look at Dalvin Cook as that guy who, he's exploded the last couple of weeks, but I bet if you have Saquon, you could send Saquon plus maybe a 2021 second for Cook, and people are going to start, wondering about the injury thing. Saquon has his own issues, so there is potential of that not working out. You still have like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor that I would still send away. And Jonathan Taylor is someone that I'm not going to really get into on this podcast. It's a whole another problem. He fumbled, and then that led to him getting benched. While people were complaining that whenever Gus Edwards fumbled, Gus Edwards wasn't benched with Dobbins. And I think people just need to realize, that's me included, that with these rookie running backs, don't expect them to be playing as much as we want. We've been fortunate with Swift, being able to get in there, but even he is not getting as much work as we would want, with Adrian Peterson still catching passes. So, yeah, just temper expectations for those rookie running backs. And I know, we always want those Saquons, the Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders to take over eventually. And I do expect these guys to start taking over a little bit more. Obviously, I think we all expected it to happen before week 10. So that's whenever it starts to get to that thing of oh, goodness, we're already, over halfway in the fantasy football season. So, it honestly makes running backs like James Robinson someone that is super interesting in Dynasty. He's someone that has been really difficult for me to rank. He is someone that I had a bad take on early on. If you get a 2021 first for him, send it away. Now, if I'm a contender, now, looking back, that was a dumb call. If you're retooling, rebuilding, I think I understand, doing that still. And I actually sort of think that his value is literally up first. Do you think that he has potential upside to keep that job? Or do you think it'll become more of a timeshare with a different running back? And I'm not saying running backs on his own team. I'm saying just a different running back in general. I currently have him as RB20. I have Kareem Hunt, David Montgomery, Antonio Gibson, and then Aaron Jones all above him. I could see, oh man, yeah, James Robinson's going about David Montgomery. I need to quit my love of David Montgomery. It's one of those things that he's just been so disappointing for so long, and he was literally outproduced by the backup running back on that team that was catching the passes, who I thought it could have potentially been Cordell Patterson, but it was Ryan Nall who was actually doing that this week. I'm not saying to give up on Montgomery. He is who he is. He's going to be very consistent. If you look at his points, he hasn't exploded any weeks, but he's been above 10 PPR points relatively consistently. And I'd even say he's more that, half PPR guy that you want to have on your team. Because in half PPR, he's been above 9 almost every game. Obviously you want more than that. But we saw this week how, RB1 and 2 were ridiculously large in the amount of points. And then RB3 was McKissick in PPR, and he only had 17 points. So we can't always just expect those blow-up weeks by our running backs. So don't be giving up on Montgomery trying to give him away for cheap. He'll be a consistent guy that's an RB2. That's sort of where I have him right now in my own sort of thought process. Is he's just a very consistent RB2 through 9 games. He's currently the RB14 in total points. In point per game, he is the RB26. So it's not pretty. Of course, that's not pretty. And even Ronald Jones has more points per game above him, and Ronald Jones has been dropping off. So, yeah, just don't panic on Montgomery. But I am saying that James Robinson is someone that, if I could get James Robinson for Dale Montgomery right now, if I'm a contender, heck yeah, I'm doing that. Can you do that right now? I doubt it. So yeah, and this all started with me talking about the explosion of Dalvin Cook. And yeah, he's a special player. He's someone that if you can get the injury discount on, I'd do it all day, every day. And so now we're going to the guy who has been the struggle bus dude. I'm talking about Ezekiel Elliott. What do you do with this dude? He's just hasn't been himself recently. We have it to where the first 5 weeks played really well. And I was pretty high on him. Most people were, Dak was there looking good. And then since then, they've just fallen off, and Zeke has had 12 PPR points week 6, week 7, 6 PPR points, week 8, 8.3 PPR points. And then this last week, he's he was RB29 with only 8.9 PPR points. Like 18 rushes for 51 yards. Like, yeah, if you're in a point per carry league, he's still doing okay because he's getting that workload. But he's not doing anything with it. Like Zeke actually had was tied for 6th most carries, and actually Chris McCaffrey had 18 carries. Which is someone asked me today, and this is recorded on Sunday. So he asked me about, is Chris McCaffrey going to get over 10 carries? And I'm like, honestly, for me, I'm not so worried about 10 carries. I'm thinking about 10 opportunities, and yeah. And he had 28 opportunities this game. Chris McCaffrey's a monster. If you have him on your team, hopefully you're lined up to win it all. If not, you may be able to get a good haul for him, but I would try to refrain from trying to sell cheap or, just trying to trade him type of thing. Because he's a special player, RB1. He'll be honestly rivaled with Patrick Mahomes for Superflex, number 1 overall. It's definitely Patrick Mahomes for me now, but I think Christian McCaffrey is a good call for, being that 2nd or 3rd overall pick. And that's somewhere that, I'll be looking at if I want to pick him there. Actually, I won't be because, as I mentioned multiple times, I'm not doing any startups. So let's say if I was doing a mock draft, I think Christian McCaffrey has a good call for being one of those top 3 to 4 picks, as always. So I sort of stopped talking about Zeke and how he's been struggling and, what to do with him, and that's one of those things that for me, I currently have Zeke as the RB8, and with I'm not going to keep moving him down too much in Dynasty because you obviously don't want to be week by week reactive, but whenever you see those trends, and with Zeke, if he keeps falling down and struggling, then would I want to have someone like a J.K. Dobbins over Zeke right now? Dobbins, he hasn't been doing fantastic, but he at least has the upside, and even this last week, he's RB15. So Dobbins is scoring more points than Zeke is right now. Wait, that's not true, guys. I apologize. I was looking at the wrong thing. Dobbins was far from RB15. He's RB43. If anybody heard that, don't get too excited about Dobbins. But Dobbins did have a good week the week before week 8. So that's where that tier gets interesting. I don't think you can get Nick Chubb straight up for Zeke right now. I don't think you get Swift. I don't think you get Taylor. I don't think you get Mixon. Eckler maybe, and I wouldn't even want Eckler. It looks like he's 3 to 4 weeks out, and that's why one of my dynasty ads is an interesting guy. Aaron Jones, you can't get straight up. Antonio Gibson, nope. David Montgomery, yeah, easy. But Antonio Gibson, I don't even think people would do that now. So Zeke to me is a pretty solid hold in general, and just start hoping that he's going to turn it around. So that's my week 9 recap. So now I'm going to start talking about some week 10 dynasty deep ads. So these are some players that aren't rostered in a ton of leagues, and also just in general at this point in the season, we're all looking to add to fill up our bench, especially if you're a contender getting ready for the playoffs. And if you're more eliminated from the playoffs, more doing that retooling, rebuilding, you need to begin looking at players you believe have potential value beyond 2020 instead of just adding players who are scoring fantasy points. One such player that I would add as a retooling team would be Josh Rosen, and this is in Superflex leagues, of course, and I know a lot of people are saying, ugh, that's gross, what the fuck are you talking about? But, I'll have to bleep that out right there. But a lot of people get fired up about Josh Rosen because he just hasn't been anything. But with Josh Rosen, he is someone that I would want over someone like I'm about to talk about Kalen Ballage. And I know everybody just threw up in their mouth a little bit about Kalen Ballage, but with Kalen Ballage, he's scoring fantasy points. So he's someone I want on my contending teams. But for the next year, 2021, I'd rather take a chance on Rosen. And you know what you can do if nothing happens? Because you're able to grab him for free. If he's not for free, then you're obviously not picking him up. But you just drop him, just like that. So let's go to my first ad. It's going to be Kalen Ballage, running back, Los Angeles Chargers, rostered in 6% of MFL leagues. And again, I know Kalen Ballage, a gross pickup, and you'll probably be ridiculed by your league mates. You'll probably be made fun of. It's going to be a little thing, but you just got to remind them that Ballage was RB4 in PPR leagues this week, and he also scored his second highest PPR point total in his career. And also one crazy thing that a lot of you aren't going to want to hear is Ballage outperformed Kelly in week 9. And you may say, oh, it's just about the workload, this and that, but Ballage had higher points per game, yards per carry, and, yards per carry isn't the best stat, but when it's in the same game with the same team, that's concerning, especially if you're looking at Kelly as this guy who can come in and dominate. And also at the time of me talking about Justin Jackson, we don't really know the severity of his injury. We don't know if he's going to miss some time. Justin Jackson hasn't been the epitome of health also. But if, Jackson does miss time, Balaj is currently lined up to be the RB1 of the Chargers. We also have Eckler, who is, going to miss some time more. The coach literally said it's going to be longer than sooner, or whatever he said like that, but pretty much it's going to be a lot more weeks than you want it. So I'd spend about, 5 to 15% of my fab on Balaj, especially if I was an RB needy team. So the next guy is someone that I've actually been a fan of. I've stashed in a couple of my own leagues, is Devontae Booker, running back, Las Vegas Raiders. He is rostered actually in a majority of leagues on my fantasy league, 20% of MFL leagues. But that's a pretty low number actually for him with what he's done. So I have talked to Booker before, and he should be stashed in every Dynasty league for me. In Week 9, Booker had 8 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. And that was the RB14 in PPR leagues, and even higher in half PPR. Booker would also be the primary running back behind Jacobs. So if Jacobs was ever injured, Booker would be getting the carries. That's sort of what they've shown with the Raiders, that Booker gets the carries. Richard ends up getting the targets more. So I would spend 3 to 8% of my fab on Booker as a deep stash. The next guy, this guy is someone that isn't super exciting for long term, just because it seems like this is Almide Zacharias. He's wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. If I completely destroyed that name, apologies. But that he's rostered in 9% of MFL leagues. And, it's just he's not that super exciting guy because we've had Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones miss time. And he's just sort of blown up during those weeks. But, I assumed that Gage would have a good week, but he only had 2 receptions for 11 yards. While Zacchaeus was a wide receiver to start on the Falcons, he actually had wide receiver 12 in PPR leagues with 5 receptions for 103 yards and 1 touchdown. Also, he did benefit from Calvin Ridley missing time, but we also have seen Zacchaeus flash in week 3 and 4. And, I want a wide receiver like him on my bench as a spot start if needed, and I'd spend about 1 to 5% of my fab. I'm not going to go too crazy and spend a large percentage. Honestly, I'd be surprised if anybody has fab, especially if you listen to this podcast or if you, are looking at my Dynasty Waiver Wire articles on Dynasty Nerds, because for me with Dynasty, I'm just fab all over the place. If you spent your Superflex leagues, you spent 50% on Nick Mullins or, 50% on Lutton, you're pretty low on fab, if not non-existent. I actually had Jimmy Garoppolo dropped to one of my leagues. I was like, what is going on? So, I'm going to drop every single nickel of my fab, 56 of it actually, on Jimmy Garoppolo to get him on my team, because I know a lot of people are low on him. They think Nick Mullins should be the guy. Maybe something happens with Jimmy Garoppolo, but he is still the starting quarterback for the 49ers, brought to Super Bowl last year. So, yeah, just if you see any weird drops like that, spend all your fab. Don't even second guess it. If you see somebody that you're like, oh, man, that's someone I would actually pay a 2021 second-round pick for, drop all your fab immediately. Anything that you think is worth a 2021 second-round pick, drop every single 100% of your fab. Next guy, this guy's actually an interesting one. Cam Sims, wide receiver for the Washington football team. He's rostered in less than 1% of MFL leagues. He's probably available. He'd be someone that if you have anybody that's retired or if you have an open roster spot because of injuries, I'd add. He was wide receiver 2 on the Washington football team in week 9. He also stepped in nicely for Inman, who was out that week, and could potentially have the role in the offense because he did outproduce Steven Sims, who was expected to be wide receiver 2 this week. So I would stash Sims on your bench. I've talked about this multiple times. Stash these players that are scoring points on your bench because you never know what are going to happen. Like Keelan Cole, he's someone that is a weekly wide receiver 4. That's a nice flex play during bye weeks especially. So with this guy, I'd spend about 1 to 5% of my fab on Cam Sims and feel, pretty good about having him on my team. Obviously, if you're in a shallow league, then this changes everything. And these players that I just mentioned, other than maybe Balaj and Devontae Booker, don't really interest you a whole lot. But overall, I really like the deep leagues, the 30 roster spots where probably having about, 3 taxi squad spots, if not more, and really having large rosters. I find it more enjoyable. I find it fun to find those waiver wire ads. And then my last waiver wire ad is Garrett Gilbert. So this is the starting quarterback for the Cowboys in Week 9. He was the QB 19, which isn't like that great, especially when it's like he was below halfway. So it's not fantastic. I'm not saying this dude's gonna light the world on fire or anything, but he still he had 21 for 38. 243 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He also had 3 rushes for 28 yards for 14.5 4 point per touchdown points. Also, Andy Dalton's on the COVID list right now, so don't know exactly what's going to happen with that. I don't know if he has COVID or if he had a close contact, but with that, he could miss multiple weeks, and then you see Garrett Gilbert playing. And I mentioned this over and over and over again. I want starting QBs on my roster in Superflex leagues. That's a must. Like, don't play around. Like Lutton, I hope you added Lutton because he was the QB 14, 21.4 fantasy points. He actually had more fantasy points than Tua Tagovailoa. Now, what would have Lutton? If I could get any 2021 second, he's off my team ASAP. I'm not playing around with it. I'm not trying to be cute with it. I don't see him being the next Minshew or anything like that. So he's just someone that I'm immediately fine getting rid of, like ASAP. 2021 second or like a 2021 third, and a player that I can actually use. We also don't know with Minshew if he's going to be, coming back to being the starter. There's reports that he was going to be benched, but then again, he hurt his hand or his finger or whatever it was, and then Lutton came in. So Minshew, once he's healthy, could easily become the starter once he comes back, especially if the Jags keep losing. So if you can, people are probably going to say, like buy low on Lutton because people don't believe in him. My thought is sell high on Lutton. And maybe that's the philosophy everybody has, sell high on him. He's this quarterback, the odds aren't that high. Probably the more realistic trades, a 2021 third and a player like J.D. McKissick and Keelan Cole. Players like that for a contending team to help with your depth. Or even just an early 2021 third. Yeah, I'd take that for Lutton straight up. So if I could get a 2021 third and McKissick, yeah, I'd do that. And I think McKissick is someone that's sneaky at as well if you're a contending team. This is going into the, sort of planning for the trade deadline. So with McKissick, he was the quarterback 4 this last week and quarterback 3 this last week in PPR. And he's been relatively consistent, like it's hard to say consistent because, he's not even finished that high as a running back, on a weekly basis, but he still has had like the last couple weeks, he had 7.1 PPR points the week before, 14.4 in week 6, 10.9 in week 5. So 3 out of the 4 weeks over 10 PPR points. Yeah, that's someone that I'll want. And he also had 9 catches versus the Giants. So, and that was in week 9 this last week. So, yeah, McKissick is someone that I'd be looking at to add if I was a contender. If I'm retooling, rebuilding, I'm sending him away ASAP. So let's go ahead and dig into planning for the trade deadline. So I'll go ahead and start by talking about my thoughts on trade deadlines and Dynasty. I know this is a hotly debated topic. Typically, you have a lot of people that say no trade deadline. You have other people that are like, I like the structure of a trade deadline. So first of all, redraft keepers. I think having like a week 10, week 11 trade deadline makes sense, especially redraft like week 10, maybe even week 9, because once you start making trades that way, if you're a contender or not. And if you're not, then there can be issues with collusion and stuff like that, and just people not caring about the trades they make. Keeper is a little bit different. I could see like week 11, that's what my keeper does. So then you have it to where people can, make trades late to send players away and get draft picks because we allow trading draft picks. I think that's more fun, gives a little bit more strategy. But Dynasty, I'm not a huge fan of trade deadlines that happen in week 11, week 12, or even week 10. At the very, very latest, trade deadline should happen in week 13 if you have a week 14 playoff. That's just my thoughts. People give them time to sort of formulate how they want to build their teams, help people make a push for the playoffs if they have a big matchup to win it all. And by win it all, I mean win that game and then potentially go into the playoffs. And then I honestly think it's interesting as well, the no trade deadline. People are able to trade in the playoffs. I can see the potential issues with that, with people, selling the house to win it all and then destroying their team and then potentially, saying, all right, I won, I got my money, I'm out. I think it depends on your league and stuff. My personal favorite is having, quote, no trade deadline except for teams that are in the playoffs. So that means the 6 teams that go into the playoffs, they cannot trade for any players. They can still add drop. Everybody can add drop. I'm not playing around with add drop. I'm not going to say just playoff teams can add drop. Everybody can add drop. It doesn't matter. And so then non-playoff teams can now trade between each other. And how I do this on Sleeper is I set up a where the commissioner has to approve trades. And so then I'll make sure those teams are non-playoff teams. I'm always on top of it. If you can't be on top of it, then I don't know, figure out a different way. But I'm always, we're almost always on our phones and stuff. So it makes it easy. You just looked, both non-playoff teams, cool. And then after, week 14 happens, 2 teams are eliminated. So then those 2 teams that are eliminated are now added into those people that are able to trade. So on and so forth until after week 16. And then after week 16, trading opens up for everybody. I'm not a huge fan of, the whole wait forever type of thing. I will say, though, like I did say, trade's up for everybody. It's open up for everybody once they pay league dues. I think that's important as well. I know I'm getting into the rules and stuff like that right now, but I think it's important to think about how your leagues are run as well as, how you want your teams to think about your trade deadline. So, after your week 16, you're all done. Have it to where teams immediately pay league dues before they can trade. And then, make sure you set a hard deadline this the time and get everybody on top of it. And also it's easy, if you're doing league payouts right after that, be like, hey, you're going to have to pay league dues if you want to trade or do any moves. No, not any moves, but trades. So go ahead and let's just, let's say you made $100. Let's go to put that 30 back in the league and then you get your 70. Something easy like that. Nice and simple. Helps keep people, excited for the league, gets trades going right away. And then you could even just allow people to start paying right away. If you're people that, like to have your money all in one place, nice and easy, you can use League Safe. It depends on the type of league. I'd recommend League Safe if you don't know everybody. Super safe. Scott Fish is the one that runs it. It's great. So anyways, now that I've talked about trade deadlines and my thoughts, how should you plan for your specific teams? So after this week, because I'm guessing most leagues are going to do a week 10 trade deadline, because most Dynasty leagues are pretty traditional and they just follow the same rules as redraft. So with this week 10, week 11 trade deadline, you need to know your plan for your team now. The main reason that is so important is you need to know if you need to increase your depth slightly to make a push or just to make yourself feel safer for a playoff run. Or if you have players like J.D. McKissic, Keelan Cole, players like that, you need to be able to send them away now so you're not stuck with them and it's 2021 and they lose like half their value. It's detrimental. It's like sucks. That's what you have to look at is value. So if you're going to continue, trade with rebuilding teams to improve your depth. Go after players like Keelan Cole, J.D. McKissic, Fulgham, many others. I'm trying to think of some other quick names like Beasley, Amendola, guys like that no one really wants, that you can get really, really cheap. They can help your team this year, and they help those retooling teams get a pick. Like you could get Amendola for a 2021 fourth right now. People are going to like it, but they'll do it. And if they don't, whatever, you do it for Beasley instead, or you make a trade for John Brown and you trade a third instead. It's stuff like that you just sort of find those teams that are willing to make these trades. And if you're a retooling team, think about future value of the players. And, like I mentioned, I'd rather have Josh Rosen than Kalen Ballage in a Superflex league. That's a pretty easy decision for me. And yeah, like I mentioned, a lot of people are going to be like, you're crazy. Josh Rosen's washed, this and that, but I'm going to take the chance. And that's something I think a lot of people don't think about as much is the potential that we don't know. So it's important to add those players that you don't know. Some other examples of players that, I'd look to be adding is like Jameis Winston. He's someone that could potentially see a value increase in the offseason. Even like Mitch Trubisky. He could also have a value increase in the offseason because he's going to be a free agent. plenty of teams need a quarterback right now. And I'm not saying Mitch Trubisky's the answer for those teams, but some teams will convince themselves Mitch Trubisky's the answer. Even making moves for, rookies that are disappointing or that have been injured, like Bryan Edwards. Making moves for Bryan Edwards, making moves for Denzel Mims, making moves for these players that just aren't showing out, and even like Cam Akers is another example of that. So be flexible in like what you want to do, and I'm not saying go overpay or do this or that, but if I have in my retooling team, and I actually did this trade, if I have J.D. McKissic, Keelan Cole, and Logan Thomas, I'm going to ship those three away. And if I can get, I ended up getting Latavius Murray and a 2022 third, and then I traded away Murray for a 2021 second. That type of trade to me, you may look at it and you're like, man, you just lost. Like, it's not that good of a deal. But when you're looking at it in 2021, what are the odds that J.D. McKissic, who is currently in his fourth season, I don't even know his contract right now, but I don't think it'd be great. But like someone like that, maintaining this value, especially on the Washington football team with Antonio Gibson there. So I just looked at his contract. They could potentially cut him after this year, and they would save $1 million. So he probably will be cut after this year. So it's stuff like that you can move McKissic. I think Keelan Cole's a more interesting one. Potentially, but he's not worth any more than a 2021 third in my eyes. And then Logan Thomas, I love Logan Thomas, but he has not been the person of consistency. So if you can move him as well, I'd be down for that. That's one thing too. Don't get take lock with these players. Look at their value, look at them in their future, and be like, what can I do? Like Caleb Balaj, if you right now, as a retooling team, can get a 2022 third for Caleb Balaj, do it. Don't think twice. Don't think, I should be able to get a 2021 third now. No. This whole buy low, sell high stuff, it's all about availability of these players. It's all about now people want Caleb Balaj a little bit more. So that means that there's more people that want him. So people are going to trade for him now. That's all it means. It's not that people are going to trade more for him. It's people are going to trade for him. And obviously, I don't think people are going to be going goo goo gaga about Caleb Balaj. He has that name stigma to him. So with these offers that I've been mentioning, send spam offers out to everyone. Try move pieces you want to move. If you want to move depth pieces as a retooling team, take less for them. Like I mentioned, Caleb Balaj, 2022 third. That's one thing I've started to look at too. Is I'm not in love with getting picks that are multiple years out. But if I can get a pick that instead of getting a 2021 first, I get a 2021 second, and I can get a 2022 second, yeah, I should do that. It's not fun to have two picks out, but whenever you're in 2022, you're going to be liking yourself a little bit more, especially when you realize, I moved that J.D. McKissic guy who's not even in the NFL for this pick, and now I get this pick. This is great. It could be the 2.01. It could be the 2.12. You don't know. But you're starting to sort of move through your team and things, almost like cleanse it of those players that are just going to depreciate in value throughout the offseason. Like if you're a retooling team and you have Marvin Jones, try to get a 2021 third. I need to do better at that. There's a team that I have Marvin Jones on, and I keep trying to trade him away for too much, and I'm not doing a good job of doing what I preach, So it's just always be fine with taking a little bit less. And it may feel like it's a rip-off now, but when you look at it in a year, the odds are that it was a good deal for everybody. That team that's contending, they get a guy that can help them win now. Team that's retooling, they can get a pick or a young player that is underperforming that potentially has more upside long term. I'd also say, look at your QBs. If you're a retooling team, you have a lot of QBs that have a lot of question marks around them, try to move them for more stability. I know I mentioned all the rookie quarterbacks and all the guys like that, but if you can trade for Dak Prescott right now, retooling team, do it ASAP. That's something I wouldn't think twice about. So it's little moves like that, or even just pieces like quarterbacks that can increase in value, like Jameis Winston. someone I always mention. He's someone that I think is a solid guy to add. I think even like Jalen Hurts, potentially Jacob Eason. I don't know if I'd really trade for him. He's not someone I'd be super excited to have on my team. He's someone that I'd add for sure. I think someone that you should add now that I didn't mention actually, but I mentioned the last couple times. This goes back to like dynasty ads. Case Keenum, if he's in your Superflex leagues, add him right now. Just do it. Baker's on the COVID list. Looks like he'll be back next week, but you never know. Also, I had a whole podcast about rookie drafts. If you want to look at it, you can just go back to last week. It was like a couple episodes ago. But rookie picks are the cheapest right now. And if this is your first year in Dynasty, it's crazy what people will do to get some rookie picks. And with these rookie picks, get them for cheap now. That's why I mentioned 2021 seconds, 2021 thirds. Even a 2021 first, if you can make a trade for that right now, even like, especially Superflex, like the 1.10 to 1.12, those are valuable picks. And you can get decent players. It's not like a perfect science because with rookie picks, we do have busts. This year, we have Keyshawn Vaughn. Last year, N'Keal Harry. Like, it happens. There's players that are going to bust. I've also mentioned this before. I'm doing a project working at third and fourth round picks and seeing how they hit versus like dropping the hit rates, dropping the like quarterback, wide receiver, and running back like finishes for the year, and seeing how they compare. Because if you pick a guy in the third round, they can be a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3 on the year. That could be beneficial to your team. It's not perfect, obviously, because then you get to the whole argument of like, well, if they're wide receiver 4, their points per game is only like 6 or 7. Then do I really want that on my team? It's an interesting argument for sure. Something I'll be looking at more anyways. But in general, if you want your rookie, you want to get some rookie picks, get them now. Because when January hits, the value goes up until May. With your rookie picks, do not move them until May. And I'm being serious. I made some dumb trades where I sent rookie picks away. And let's just say, looking back now, I should have held on to them because I could have got more. And the offers that you're getting sent for these rookie picks in, March, April, they're still going to be around. The only time that they would ever change is if the situation changes for those players, which the odds are, as long as they're not a free agent, there's not a lot changing in the offseason. So with all this, be looking at your teams, look at them now and decide, like, what is your percentage of making playoffs? If it's like below 40%, 30%, start selling assets. Start selling those low-end guys that you can't really use for the next year that you don't want. And one person I did mention, buying like Travis Fulgham, he's someone that I think can have a little bit more long-term value. So he's not someone that I'm saying you have to move if you're a retooling team. He's someone that I'd want to grab if I'm a contending team because he's someone that you can get relatively cheap still. Like if you can get him for a mid-2021 second, yeah, I'd do that. So as I said, know the direction you're going, contending, buy for depth. You never know what's going to happen. Injuries happen all the time. Depth is going to be your friend, especially this year. If you're a retooling team, trade for picks. Add players that are going to actually potentially be valuable for the next year. Like I mentioned, Garrett Gilbert and Cam Sims and Al-Mahid, Zacchaeus, guys like that. Even Devontae Booker, like guys like that. Caleb Alage, the potential of them having value in 2021 is pretty low. Why not add guys that you believe in that can have even more value? And typically that to me is the quarterbacks in Superflex. Because most of the younger running backs and wide receivers and tight ends, are already on teams. So someone like a Josh Rosen, Case Keenum, guys that have shown that they can do a little something, or have this talent, or just haven't seemed to be given a chance. Go after those guys, especially like you don't need to hold on to Garrett Gilbert Maybe move him for a 2022 fourth. Just get him off your team, get him on another team, do it for something really cheap. Don't even overthink it. Try to get something. If you can, you drop him because the odds are he's not going to help you at all. And lastly, if you can make a move to win the ship, do it. Don't overthink it. Obviously, this shouldn't be I'm going to make this move, and if my team stays healthy, I'm going to be good. No, it should be my team is solid. I'm going to make this move to take me to the next level and really set myself up to win the ship. Because that's win the championship. That's the goal. You don't need to be playing around, I need to trade away James Robinson for if I get a mid-first, I'll trade him away no matter what. No way, Jose. Yeah, I get it. His schedule gets a little bit rougher. But he has been just absolutely a monster. And that goes for anybody that, like Travis Fulgham. It's guys like that you gotta hold strong a little bit, and you have to think these are guys that can help my team now. And if you're going for a championship run, that is more important than helping your team for the future. Because if you've had multiple dynasty teams this season, you probably have that one team that got destroyed by injuries. The team had CMC, OBJ, Sutton, maybe Dak, players like that. And it's not every year you get to that championship because you can have this team. It looks great. You're feeling good. Boom. Injury. You're out for the year. So don't play around when you get into the championship. Don't be cute about it. Don't try to make moves here and there that are trading for picks and stuff. If it's excellent value, you got to, weigh it. But in general, I'm not going to be doing these trades. I'm going to be like, why are you even offering this? This other person. So, this is a more philosophical, Week 10 Dynasty waiver wire ads and, making your plan for the trade deadline. Want to have a discussion about the trade deadline because I think it's important to start planning ahead. And I mentioned planning ahead multiple times, but that trade deadline is right around the corner for most of y'all. So it's time to, really be on top of it. Start making moves. If you ever have any questions for me, you can always DM me on Twitter or at me on Twitter. Not surprising. Exciting news for me as well is currently working on making a Patreon page to, make it to where I can get more personalized DMs sent out to everybody. I try to do my best on Twitter, but sometimes I can only send short responses. So with Patreon, I'd obviously spend more time with it. Also doing Patreon-specific articles, doing Patreon-specific, podcast episodes, all sorts of fun stuff like that. Still working on the logistics. Obviously, we're the beginning of November, and my goal is December 1st. So everybody here is the first ones listening to it. So, I'm excited for it. If you have any ideas on stuff that you'd want to have on a Patreon, that's you think would be nice, let me know. Also, if you're one of my start 2 tight end buddies, I'll be working on, my goal is to have some start 2 tight end rankings for Dynasty up there and for everybody to look at that has it. It's obviously not going to be right on December 1st. It's going to take some time. I got to look at a lot of stuff, different things, but it's that type of stuff that I want to, have fun with it and just get to know you all a little bit better. So I want to thank you all for supporting the podcast. Really appreciate rating a review on Apple Podcasts if you have a chance, if you have Apple, like an iPhone. Also, make sure to subscribe to the Snake in the Drop podcast, or if you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Been having a lot of new listeners come in recently, which is fantastic. Appreciate all y'all checking out the podcast. If you ever have anything to tell me, about the podcast episode, stuff you want me to talk about, again, DM me anytime. This is about, honestly, like everybody, they'll send me DMs and they'll be like, oh, if you have time for this, like, I'd appreciate a response. And if I ever miss a DM, just let me know. And that's because DMs and talking to people on Twitter is honestly what helps me with like thought process about players. Like I had someone post on commented on a post that I made about Bryan Edwards. I take a 20-21 second easy, and this was back in September. They said, "Oh yeah, would you still do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I would." And I was like, "Oh crap, no one's been talking about Bryan Edwards in months." Or even just people talking about trades and then really thinking about trade values, and it helps me with my dynasty rankings. And so, just so y'all know, this isn't just me just giving away. I'm also getting something too. So I appreciate everybody that reaches out to me, that adds me on Twitter, that talks to me, that supports my podcast and everything. So thank you all for doing that. And again, just thank you all for tuning in. And as we are every single week, let's be snakes. Let's go for the ship, or let's go for that solid retool to set you up for the future. Don't just be that middle person. Go for it all, and let's be snakes this season.